Welcome to the Unknown Webcast, and as always, in case you haven't figured it out, I am so conservative that I have trouble driving, even turning left, even when I'm driving. This is broadcast number 24, and Carl Teichrib is our guest on this edition of the Unknown Webcast. Some of you may have read our blog this week, the Goose Chase Brian McLaren finds himself in, which initiated our discussion of transformational festivals. What are they? And why should we care? Uh, my name is Don Vino, and I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast, and our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of tonight's show.
Well, good evening from the lightning capital of the solar system, Southwest Florida. Our sponsors tonight are World's End Theology Outlet, your one-stop destination for dubious doctrines, half-baked heresies, and other notions whose time has gone. World's End Theology Outlet, and the Coexist Boutique. Why let your loved one's murderous, totalitarian, or insane worldview get in the way of giving them the perfect gift? World's End Theology Outlet. I'm sorry, the Coexist Boutique. I got them mixed up. Back to you, Don.
But isn't the Coexist Boutique a subsidiary of World's End Theology Outlet? Maybe that's what you were thinking.
It depends on what week we're in. I forget. I think it's a separate thing altogether.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So, as I was thinking about this over the last few days, it occurred to me that even though I'm sort of curmudgeonly and enormously conservative, I really am so conservative I have a hard time turning left when I drive. Even though that is the case, there was a time that I went to Cornerstone Festival, which was hosted by Jesus People USA. And I have to confess, I went somewhat unwillingly. This was in 1991. There was a big issue going on with a professor from Trinity Seminary, Murray J. Harris, who was teaching a non-physical, basically a Jehovah's Witness view of the resurrection body. And so Dr. Norman Geisler and I had a friend in common who had called me and asked me if I would go to Cornerstone to man a table for Dr. Geisler because he wanted to get this information out, and he wanted someone who could actually make a reasoned defense for the physicality of the resurrection. And my first reaction was, nah, camping with 25,000 of my closest friends is not my idea of a good time. And so they called me back and they said, well, you get to meet Dr. Geisler, you get to work with Dr. Geisler. And I said, I'd love to meet Dr. Geisler, read his books, love his way of thinking. But I have to tell you, camping with 25,000 of my closest friends is not my idea of a good time. And so they called me back again. They said, okay, Dr. Geisler decided that he would share his hotel room with you if you will go. And so I said, okay, fine, I'll go. And so that was my introduction to the world of festivals. And when I arrived, in fact, I'm wearing my Cornerstone hat tonight in honor of festivals. When I arrived, I was dumbfounded. It was like going into a new country almost. They had a lot of bands there, obviously. It was supposedly a sort of a Christian music festival that struck me like being like a Christian Woodstock and a flea market, because they had these huge exhibition tents where you could buy virtually any kind of homemade product, T-shirts, that sort of thing. And they did something unusual. They had seminar tents where they had world-class apologists, Oz Guinness, Norm Geisler, James Sire, Dr. Philip Johnson, Bob and Gretchen Passantino, teaching apologetics and things, solid biblical teaching. Unfortunately, in the last years, Jesus people sort of wandered away from that aspect. But you would see all sorts of people there. So how is that the same and or different than the kinds of festivals we're talking about now?
Well, it's remarkably different. There are similarities in the sense that it's a gathering place, a celebration, a place of music, a place of workshops, hanging out with 25,000 of your friends in a tent. Those similarities exist, but certainly different in the worldview that's being portrayed. In transformational festivals, which is part and parcel of a broader umbrella called evolutionary culture, the focus is also on music and on artwork, and there's workshops, and you can camp out with all kinds of people. But the focus is on a spiritual transformation, a changeover, a recognition of our oneness, and a celebration of our oneness. And it is not the biblical worldview that you are just elaborating at the festival that you attended.
Okay. So central to the transformational festivals today is you, whereas central to Cornerstone, at least for a very long time, was how do we better understand, serve, worship Jesus Christ as Lord, and share Him with a lost culture.
Right, and now what you have in terms of transformational festivals is really a return to the idea of Woodstock, the Aquarian festival, because that's how Woodstock was billed back in the day, an Aquarian event, an Aquarian festival, and it's a return to that sense of a festivity to celebrate our connection with nature, our connection with each other. We find unity, we find wholeness. We are all one as we engage on the dance floor, as we engage in ecstatic dance, as there are oftentimes opening rituals, ceremonies. There will oftentimes be closing rituals and ceremonies, depending, of course, on the event you go to. And the flavor is remarkably different, therefore, from what your experience was. Typically, transformational festivals are antagonistic to Christianity. And this is a kind of a movement or a phenomena that the Christian community has been largely unaware of. But in the last 15 years, Don, it has exploded in growth. In fact, it's considered a complete growth-oriented industry. If you want to make some money, you want to work at building a sense of community, host a festival, bring in some EDM artists, bring in some big bands, have workshops on yoga and holistic health and Reiki, energy healing, all these things, people come.
So, like EDM bands, what's an EDM band? Is that like an experimental dating machine? What is EDM?
EDM, electronic dance music. So it's a combination of the rave culture, and that's really a significant part of the music expression of many of these.
Do they play Moby? Like, or is this Beatles music or Moby, or where would this be?
Not Beatles music, that's for certain. It's a little faster pace than Beatles music.
Am I going to need to take my blood pressure medicine before listening to this? Okay, I'll let you guys keep going.
Probably.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's fine, Ron.
Okay, so Ron, go ahead.
I'm sorry if I got you off your mental railroad track there.
Oh, it happens to me often. I get my mental railroad track gets derailed often. Now I was thinking about the Wild Goose Festival, and we wrote a blog earlier this week, or actually last week. The Goose Chase Brian McLaren finds himself in, titled by Ron, by the way, and great meme you made up there with the guys chasing the goose down the side of the mountain. But as I was looking at this festival, the Wild Goose Festival, which McLaren is part of, Frankie Schaefer is part of, Father Defrocked Father, what's the... Now I'm having a brain burp here. I hate it when that happens.
Phyllis Tickle used to be a part of it.
I'm sorry?
Phyllis Tickle used to be a part of it. In fact,
Phyllis Tickle was part of it till she passed away, and
that's right.
She's in the promo video. Why am I having the problem with the Catholic bishops? He frocked, started earth worship. It'll come back to me.
Okay.
Urantia readership was promoted there 2 years ago, I think. And it seems like the theme of the festival is we are all very spiritual people, uh, atheists and non-atheists and Buddhists and Hindus, and we all gather together, uh, having left the path that we were following to find a new path. What does that mean?
It's that sense of community, that sense of community where we don't have anything that gets in the way of each other's feeling of unity and acceptance and tolerance. The difference, and this is important for us, especially now as believers, to understand, is we're not called into a community. We're called into a body, and there's a big difference. Community is temporary. Community can have all kinds of different meanings. For the Christian, we're part of something that is eternal, and that is the body. But what you're seeing with these festivals is a type of organic community where your beliefs and your predispositions are not supposed to be a hang-up to anybody else. It's open, it's inclusive, it's radically inclusive, and the feeling here is that regardless of what belief system you hold, you are accepted. You are spiritually equals. You are one with us as we celebrate the all. It is that feeling of being part of that global community, or that community in that moment. And that's what these festivals really epitomize. And it is a feeling. There is a feeling that's attached with it. And so you can have events like Wild Goose where there are genuine emotions, genuine feelings, genuine expressions, and they are wrapped within it. And it is definitely a place where those feelings and expressions then become released at that location, and they'll walk away from it going, "This is life changing. This was a
Really?
transformative type of experience."
At least until Monday.
Right,
I
that's right.
never,
You're right.
I
You're
never
right,
really
Ron.
got the whole. I never really got the whole being enamored with the word community. I don't know. Maybe other people have different connotations, or maybe the word evokes different things for other people. But for me, the word community always evoked kind of a generic antiseptic feeling. Your community center was where you went to basically, not be identified with anything particular, but everything in general. Uh, there's nothing. I mean, it just kind of sucks all the individuality out of you. That's what the word community means to me. When they started using it for churches, like Willow Creek Community Church and so on, I got it. I got what they were trying to do. It was different from, but my reaction to the word community has always been the same. And when you have the body of Christ, that has always been very different. That's been something to get excited about. So why do people get excited about community? Why do people think this is so transformative when they go to these things?
Because it's visceral. It's something that they can feel and experience in the moment. It
So
is
like
something.
what kind of, those must be some moments. What's going on?
Well, and maybe that's a good question. What does go on? And let me just give you a bit of a breakdown of what a transformational event may look like. And everyone, of course, is different. Everyone has nuances, but they're typically 3 to 10 day events. After that, they dissolve. They're considered organic community. That's how they like to label themselves. That this is a sense of family, that you're being welcomed home. Every time you return, you're returning back to your home place, your place now where you've discovered yourself in your community. Again, it's a concept of radical tolerance, non-judgmentalism, and so sometimes these events will have sacred spaces. There may be temples set up, shrines. There's a lot of talk of harmony with nature, natural settings. You may have them in deserts or on a beachfront somewhere or in a mountain valley. Um, This is a place where you're going to come together and engage in rituals and have different spiritual encounters, a lot of yoga, a lot of meditation. Your trance music, your EDM, electronic dance music, plays a part of it. There's ecstatic dance. You are just letting yourself go. And so that itself has the potential to make you feel like you are now part of this group. The stranger beside you, you're sharing the same energy as them, and you're all doing this corporately. Some of the different festivals will have things like visionary art, interactive art. I think Wild Goose has that as well. And a few of them have learning and exploring opportunities, workshops and lectures. And the thing, though, Ron, that why they walk away from it going, this was so awesome, is that it is experiential. It's participatory. You are not simply there as an observer. You're not going to a rock concert where all you're doing is sitting in a bleacher watching the band far away. You're engaging up close and personal. And so after you've expended this kind of energy over the course of 3 to 10 days, there's lots of emotion that goes with it.
Don, he was breaking up on my end. How about on yours?
No, I've got him fine. I've got him fine. Yep.
Okay. Okay. All right. Great.
We just don't want you to know anything.
I was catching it in between the breakups, what he was saying. So it is, there's been a lot of writing actually over not just the years or the decades, but even centuries, about how when people get wrapped up in mass movements, even on a local and temporary level. I mean, you were saying earlier these things could go on for 10 days and then dissolve. Well, if I was in one for 10 days, I think I'd dissolve. But the longer, it seems like the longer it would go on, the more suggestible people might be, the more they did a lot of writing in the 50s and 60s about what it takes to break down people's personalities. This was done in conjunction with studies of some of the tactics that the Chinese tried during the Korean War on some American POWs, but also going back even further than that, when people get caught up in these big group experiences, it's almost like they're being pulled along and they do things that they wouldn't normally do in a private setting or in a more familiar setting. Do these kinds of things happen? Do people bay at the moon or stand up and give testimonies at great length in a closet for 50 years? Or what goes on? I mean, what kinds of things can happen?
You hit it, Ron. You got it. It is a mass movement. And so there's some pretty bizarre things that can happen. I was at a small transformational festival last year doing a social survey, and it was a clothing event. People were supposed to wear the clothes, but by Saturday the clothes were coming off, and it was far more open than what it intentionally was being advertised at. People feel free to a sense of abandonment.
Well, so you kept your clothes on, though, right?
Absolutely.
Kept your clothes on and your wits about you.
Yep. But that
extra layers just in case.
Yeah. But that idea of abandonment and we're not doing things we've never thought of doing before, that's very central to the idea of a transformational event, because the whole purpose and intent of it is to give you a new experience. And so that means doing something different than your 9-to-5 job, something different than what you're going to be doing on the weekend. That is opening yourself up to something that is certainly more fringe, more risky than what you would typically be accustomed to.
One of the guys who practiced some of this, it was a smaller group, was a guy named Charles Manson. He would get the members of the family to do things that they wouldn't normally do. And so when you describe this, I'm thinking, what people are doing really is they're setting themselves up to be controlled. They think they're gaining freedom, when they might not, they might be getting just the opposite in some cases.
I think the important thing to realize with these events is that they're not, how do I say this? They're not controlling the worldview or the mindset of the people who are coming. These events are happening because the people already have that worldview. We already have a society that's enamored with that worldview. And so the control has already taken place in the classroom, it's already taken place on the television, it's already taken place within the household, even the churches. These events reflect what is already taking place in our society and in our culture. Uh, and the aspect of control is interesting because yeah, you're right. When there's that kind of raw emotion, there is a lot of suggestibility. There's a lot of pull to move along with the group.
So they're already trained in a particular worldview, unwittingly often, through school, through homes, through churches, as you point out, through media, films, and that sort of thing. Uh, and then they have these euphoric experiences in this setting where they are able to experiment with this worldview to see how it feels in in an unencumbered way.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And so a lot of times people will walk away with language that's reminiscent to a religious conversion experience. I pulled up a couple of quotes that I have in one of my lecture series that I do on this movement. Here's a few quotes just to give you a sense of that flavor, that religious, spiritual, transformational flavor. Simply the most extraordinary spiritual and political and cultural thing that has ever happened to me. And of course, it completely affected the rest of my life. Here's a quote from Burning Man, the Burning Man Festival, which is noted as a global changer, a world-changing type of festival because it's spun so many other similar events. The experience of Burning Man was just so overwhelming and so powerful that it literally sent my life on a 9-degree turn from the direction it was heading, and I never looked back. Some person said this way, or put it this way, it is my religion. There's no doubt about it. So another one said this, having the trance experience changes your life forever. I don't think there's any way you can see the world the same after you've been through that experience. And so this is the language of a religious conversion or a religious encounter, something that has now changed them and their worldview. It's something that has altered them in a way that this is now has a spiritual importance to it.
Okay.
So
Tell us about Burning Man. And you say this is one of the bigger ones and has spawned others. When you say bigger, are we talking like 5,000 people, 25,000 people?
Last year, approximately 70,000 attended, and this year they're looking at roughly the same number, 70,000.
All right. Now that's at one event, right, in the U.S.?
That's right. That's right. Just one event. Almost every state, including Florida and including Illinois, has a Burning Man culture. There will be smaller Burning Man events. Florida has a number of events that have been influenced by Burning Man. Wild Goose Festival was influenced in part by Burning Man. Israel, just a few weeks ago, I believe it was, or maybe it was last weekend, had their Burning Man festival. South Africa has a burn. Canada, in Alberta, there's a regional burn at that location. There's even a regional burn festival in the virtual world of Second Life. And you can go and, through your avatar, participate in a virtual burn. It has spawned its own subculture, and really, you can't call it counterculture anymore. It has become it's become the festival to go to for Silicon Valley, for Google. In fact, the little artistic image that pops up on your Google search page on occasion, the very first one that took place was the Burning Man logo, the very first Google, I can't remember the name that Google uses for their artistic display on their search engine, but the very first one celebrated Burning Man.
So is it safe to say that the transformational experience that they all are claiming to have, let's say just limited to Burning Man, does it fit a particular profile? I mean, are they all coming, I mean, what does it look like? What have they been transformed into? What is what they say their life has been changed. In what specific concrete way has it been changed?
Mhm. Typically, it's been changed so that you come back next year.
So
Satisfied.
And
their calendar is different.
right, but you raise a good point. Like what has changed in their lives? Usually, it's hard to define. I imagine for every person it'd be a very individual thing. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a young lady who her band performed at Burning Man. Her band has also performed at Glastonbury and a number of other major transformational events. And I've talked to other performers as well. They call it, and they're now Christians. They've come out of that experience, have come out of that culture, and their way of describing it is simply carnal joy. And so you leave with it, with having this week of carnal joy in the desert or in the mountain valleys, and then the longing is now to return to that. There is a hope that this model that you've experienced is something that you can hopefully feel again, that you can hopefully return to again, which is one of the reasons, Ron, why they keep saying welcome home when you have returning people going from festival to festival, because they feel that this is now that experience that they identify themselves with.
Now,
When you say carnal, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
go
Well, I
ahead,
was going to
Ron.
ask when you say carnal joy, it makes me think of books that were written back in the '70s that my parents wouldn't let me look at. Um, what
Boy, they're bringing
uh,
titles up.
what uh, what are they talking about when they talk about carnal joy? I mean, I know carnal has to do with the flesh. Maybe they just had some really good food. I don't know, chili con carne. I don't know.
Well, Burning Man is noted over the years for having its theme camps devoted for certain sexual encounters or sexual adventures. There's a lot of sexual adventurism in a number of these festivals, and again, the psychedelic aspect is also there. These events, in fact, there's a debate within the culture itself. At what point do we try to distance ourselves from the psychedelic experience, from the drug culture, this type of thing? And that's what's meant by carnal joy. It is a place to come and let yourself experience whatever it is that you have probably had an inhibition to at some point, or where you would keep yourself back from if this was your workplace or in your day-to-day life. Here you can let those boundaries start to fall away. When I was at one transformational event last year doing social surveys, it was interesting overhearing talk about how some of the people were going to be structuring their psychedelic intake over the course of the day. You're like, okay, well, this is certainly not your small town festival. This is not your county fair anymore. This is something that celebrates those experiences where you feel that you are now connected into that sense of oneness.
For those who are watching this webcast now, by the way, if you're watching and you want to send in questions, there's a question box on the side you can use because this is Q&A, and we will try to field those. For those who are watching, though, and are kind of like me, they're pretty conservative and wondering, does this really impact me or anyone I know? I mean, this sounds like a kind of a small thing. Okay, Burning Man, 70,000 people, but that's only one festival. How widespread is this? How many festivals? You're actually kind of creating a pin map of festivals around the nation and Canada. How many festivals are there? Is like 10, 20, 30?
When I started doing this research of 2012 or so, and trying to get a handle of the culture, because I've been following Burning Man for quite some time because it's culturally the cutting edge. But in 2012, 2013, I realized there's a lot more festivals out there. And at that time, I had estimated 120 to 150 that I had kind of marked down. I was really wrong. I was so wrong. There's not 120 or 150 festivals. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. Just in the U.S. and Canada, my pinning project, I'm using Google Earth to pin the locations and the details of each event that I'm looking at. Right now, I have almost 300 pins across Canada and the U.S., mostly the U.S. And I know I have another 50 or so to vet, and another 50 or so that need to be put down because I just haven't had the time to do that job. Areas that there's saturation concentrations of these festivals, upper part of Washington State, Oregon, California, loads and loads in California. Colorado, lots. In fact, 2 weeks ago was the Sonic Bloom Festival in southern Colorado. I think there's another one coming up, the Beloved Festival. No, that one's in Oregon. That's coming up next weekend. There are just piles. And when you take a look at evolutionary culture, not just transformational festivals like Burning Man, but you expand that label out to include things like Pagan Pride Day, which happens in a couple of dozen cities across the U.S. already. When you take and include pagan festivals, pagan celebrations, when you include music events like Tomorrowland, which is simply a music event. It's a concert, but has a legend or a theme, a mythos that speaks to oneness from beginning to end and ingrains that constantly. You're looking at hundreds. And like I said, I have about 300 or so pinned right now, majority being in your country.
Wow. Well, so I was looking, and I had mentioned just before we started to Carl, the Circle Sanctuary, which is the oldest 501c3 Wiccan group in the U.S. They have about a 200-acre campus up in Wisconsin, about 2 hours from us here. They have an annual pagan festival. I guess it's a fairly large one. I had no idea until I started looking at this after talking with you. And then you tell me that we have other pagan festivals kind of right in central U.S. right here, right around the Chicago area. Right?
There's actually quite a few. There's a large one on the south end of Illinois, the southern part, in the hill country. It's called Pagan Spirit Gathering. PSG's been around since, I think, since the early 1980s. It's one of the largest and longest running pagan festivals of its kind. There's another one that takes place in south central Ohio called Starwood. Again, it's been around since the early 1980s. One of the things that's fascinating with this movement, if you take a broad approach to the sense of evolutionary culture, not just simply a transformational festivals like Burning Man, but you include pagan events openly pagan events, is there's a revival of fairy festivals, Beltane festivals, all kinds of events that have their roots in a pagan mythos. Beltane in the Forest takes place in West Virginia. There's a fairly large fairy festival that happens in, people might go, a fairy festival, but a fairly large fairy festival that takes place not far from, I believe it's from Pittsburgh, in that part of Pennsylvania. And then there's also a lot of Hindu festivals that are happening too. Holi Festival, which takes place in Spanish Fork, Utah, just south of Salt Lake City, brings together something to the effect of 65,000 people to its 2-day festival celebrating the pagan, pardon me, not the pagan, but the Hindu legend of Holi and Krishna and Radha. I have friends who are involved in a mission to Mormonism inside of central Utah. They go to the Holi Festival and they witness to the thousands and thousands and thousands of Mormons who are going to chant Krishna, Krishna, Rama, Rama.
Wow.
You're kidding.
All right, Ron,
Now,
we're going to turn this over to you for our break, and then we're going to come back.
Is it already that time, Don?
It is that time.
Okay, I'll hold my question then. All right, well, our good friends at World's End Theology Outlet want you to know about a celebration, a festival that is coming up, and for a limited time only, you can get the tickets directly through them. This festival would be the first annual celebration of moral apathy. We cannot speak highly enough of this. We tried to have one last year, but it was canceled because of lack of interest. In this case, though, we are going to have some really great breakout workshops, including apathy. Most people could take it or leave it. Building an apathy-based system of values, and does anybody really care what tolerance is? The first annual celebration of moral apathy, COMA, sponsored by the Apathy Coalition. Join us or don't. And that's from our good friends at World's End Theology Outlet. So,
Join us or don't. I love it.
how about I have a question, and it has to do with the demographics of all of these scads of festivals you keep talking about. I was thinking, I was going out of my mind listening to you, and it looks like you have a list prepared just to rattle off to us. Uh, the Back in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, there was a group of people called the Deadheads, and there were thousands of these people, and they traveled the country following the Grateful Dead from city to city. It's like they had no lives. They followed the Grateful Dead and attended their concerts. Then when the Grateful Dead packed up and moved off to another city, they followed them. It was like a whole community was following the Grateful Dead. I have a friend who was not exactly part of that community. He made money off of it, though, by having a trailer that he served food out of. He cooked. He outfitted it so that he could cook food, and he followed the Deadheads around the country and the continent, I guess. Could it be that a lot of people who attend one of these great big festivals is a lot of them follow the festivals around? Are there a lot of like the police were beginning to notice in the last couple of years at some of these riots that the same participants were there. We even have that going on in our country, that the same people come, there's a riot over here now, let's go there and cause trouble. Could it be that many of these people are repeat attendees at different festivals?
There certainly is some of that. Of that, there's no question. A year and a half ago or so, I was flying to San Diego. I had to give a presentation on transformational festivals to Peter Jones's think tank group. And I was sitting in the airport in Minneapolis, and this girl walked up. She sat down beside me as we were waiting for our planes, and she had a hula hoop, and just her dress and her mannerism suggested that there was something a little bit different about her. So I engaged her in conversation, and I just said, are you a flow artist? And she's, yes, I'm a flow artist. And so I said, which transformational festivals have you been to? And so she listed off 5 or 6 different events, and we had a really interesting yet short conversation. When it was all done, I asked her, where are you going? And she was heading off to California, another part of California where she was going to participate in other festivals. And I asked her what was common between all the festivals that she's attended. And her words were this: it's all spiritual. It's just all very spiritual. But you're right, Ron. There is a certain carryover. However, there's enough festivals, and there's enough diversity in the festivals to suggest that there's a larger interest base than just simply 70,000 people going from one festival to another.
The first I heard about Burning Man was through a fellow named John Moorhead, who wrote a master's thesis on the topic. And I have to admit, I was pretty, I was pretty apathetic about it when he wrote it.
So you found it coma.
So I went to the coma thing instead. Yeah, it was much more interesting. His thesis was called Burning Man Festival as Life-Enhancing Post-Christendom Middle Way. And on his blog, this is back 10 years ago now, which would have been the 10th anniversary of Burning Man, I guess. He talks about it, and he quotes somebody else who says, I want to suggest, this guy's name is Pike. I'm not sure what his first name is. He says, I want to suggest that popular religious sites like Burning Man Festival are essential to an understanding of contemporary issues and future trends in American cultural and religious life. And when he said that, I have to admit I was really skeptical. But now I'm still a little bit, because I did a little bit of math while you were talking. If there are let's say 500 festivals, and they attract 50,000 people each, that's 25 million people. That's a lot of people, but it's still a small, relatively small percentage of our country's population. It would be, let's say, the size of a major denomination in our country, and yet we're talking about they're not going to these things every week. They're going to them, once or twice a year, maybe. So, I mean, maybe I just live in a very sheltered part of the country, or maybe I just don't know my neighbors very well. There probably are people from my neck of the woods who attend Burning Man. It just doesn't seem to have that much impact. Am I underestimating? Am I being too skeptical? Are you going to tell me that I should maybe be a little bit more open-minded about this?
No, a certain amount of skepticism is always okay. It's a good way to launch into things and to discover, all right, where is this all really going? Where it's all really going to, and where it's all at. 25 million people. I don't think that many people even go to it, not even close.
I'm talking about
Right.
I just estimated 500 festivals with 50,000 participants each,
Right.
trying to do a little overkill maybe.
Oh, and that, yes, Ron, that would be overkill, because a lot of the festivals are under 5,000. I mean, there's a huge range of how many people will be at a certain festival or a certain event. Where the significance lies is the sense that, number one, it is a reflection of what our neighbors believe. These events didn't exist 25 years ago, wouldn't have existed 25 years ago. They would have been fringy, and there were a few, but they were definitely more on the fringe side. Burning Man has been around since '86. There's been a few others that have been around for a little bit longer period of time, but it would have been relatively unheard of. It was on those outer edges. Now it's no longer on the outer edge. Now, if you're going to Burning Man, Google's going to Burning Man. PayPal goes to Burning Man. Back in the 1980s, when the New Age movement was fringy and it was kind of like, oh, what's this all about? You would see the CEOs of major corporations going to workshops at Esalen or the Aspen Institute, different places like that. And we took it serious or we should have taken it serious, because even though it was a small percentage of the population, like really a small percentage of the population, they had the energy, the resources, and the dynamics to be able to interject that worldview into a much, much larger spectrum of society.
So we're talking about thought influencers that are involved with this, that they have these transformational experiences, and then they go back to their corporations like Google, and that then starts pervading the organization and seeping out into culture in more, what's the word I want to use? Not secretive exactly. It just sort of seeps into culture from those areas.
Yeah, what's interesting with Google is they've been there since basically the beginning of the corporation.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Silicon Valley goes to Burning Man. That's who goes to Burning Man. The demographics of Burning Man is vast, it's diverse, but really it is San Francisco, it is Silicon Valley.
So Google is transformational festivals and transhumanism. This is interesting.
Actually, and there are connections. There really are connections. Philip Roseberg, who was the founder of Second Life, he's also a burner, and that's the term they use for themselves. There are carryovers, yes, because it's a recognition, Don. It's a recognition that the world is changing. The world is changing, and they see themselves as the sharp edge of the spear, changing that world in front of us.
Well, I have really sad news for them. It isn't really changing all that much. It is just new to them. This is what we see in the first century.
Right.
Yeah. This is a low tech affair generally, isn't it? Burning Man and others like it. Is that
Usually, yeah.
and all
Well,
these
Burning Man
yeah,
certainly is. Yes.
techies are
Yeah,
I'm
Burning
sorry.
Man is certainly low tech. Other events have a lot more, a lot more lights and well, not more lights. Pardon me, a lot more technology behind it. But Burning Man it is really interesting. It is an artistic expression. There's a lot of artwork that happens at Burning Man. But other ones like Lightning in a Bottle, which isn't a huge one, only 15 to 20,000 people go to the Lightning in the Bottle, which is in California. Um, it's noted for its temples of consciousness. It's noted for its lights and its technology. And another one, Moog Fest in South Carolina, same kind of thing. Again, noted for its technology, a place, in fact, where technology and transformation come together.
I attended
It's hard to keep your. Pardon me?
I attended the precursor to Lightning in a Bottle. It was called Lightning Bug in a Bottle. Did, did didn't Ben Franklin start that lightning in a bottle thing? I forget. Flew a kite or
I think,
something.
He was kind of
yeah.
the key man for that sort of stuff. Yeah.
But there's just so much happening. It's hard to keep it's hard to wrap your head around it. And even though I've been watching and engaging in this culture for some time, it's hard even for me to wrap my head around how large it is, where everything is happening all the time, because there's just so much going on. This afternoon, I had a phone call from a friend who has been going to Burning Man since 1996 doing evangelism, and it has changed so radically. From one time being simply kind of a party in the desert, a place to shoot your guns, drive crazy, and do lots of nutty stuff, to now becoming this hub of culture and
culture and commerce, probably.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the commerce side is interesting because they turn their back on the idea of commodifying it. You're not supposed to be able to buy or sell. In fact, they really control even picture taking and especially videography work.
Yeah, I was reading about that. They want you to give gifts. They call it gifting, right?
Right. Yeah,
So you basically make things to give away or something like that, or bring
that's
things to
right.
give away.
And give away your
Okay.
time and your energy when you're there. Yep.
So
Okay.
Ron's question earlier was an interesting one, which we sort of glossed over. This is a low-tech event. How is it that these high-tech individuals like Google are attracted to it?
Well, they've been attracted to it from the beginning, or not from the beginning, but from the beginning of their own operation. They're attracted to it because they realize that, yeah, these are creative people. This is a place of hyper creativity, hyper experiential encounters, and so and because so much of it has been drawn out of the San Francisco Silicon Valley area, it was almost from its very beginnings a place where that community came together. It was a place where San Francisco could go and hang out, and that's always remained. San Francisco really has an entire burning culture within the city itself. It's viewed, Burning Man, even though it happens in Nevada, it's viewed as a San Francisco, kind of a hub for San Francisco. It's their event.
So it's a San Francisco event held in another location.
Right. It started in San Francisco. It started burning an effigy on the beach in San Francisco, and after a few years of having more and more people show up, and then problems with the law, the Cacophony Society, which used to be known as the Suicide Club, they said, hey, we know a place out in the desert. Let's go and do our shenanigans out there. And away they went. And the rest is kind of history. But San Francisco followed them out. And that's the place to go.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
Ron,
what is this?
you have another commercial too, don't you?
Yeah. Well, I do coming up. I was going to ask a question though, and that is,
Okay.
what is the significance of the effigy, the Burning Man effigy? Why pick that? Why do that? Why not? And why burn him? Why not just put whipped
Shoot
cream
him.
on him or something like that? Or yeah.
There's lots of speculation as to what it means. Larry Harvey, the one who hoisted the effigy in the first place, and he still runs Burning Man. He kind of discounts or doesn't hold to the fact that there's really anything about the man. It's just simply something. And for many people, it might represent power or authority. The man. This is a place where you let that go. You discard the man. Other people have said, hey, this might be a reflection of one of his former lovers. There's all kinds of speculation about what it is.
Could have father issues too. We could delve deeply into this one. So.
Yeah, another thing that they do burn, though, because they burn the effigy after a week, then on Sunday they burn their temple, which is a very, very different experience. So the burning of the man is the burning of a man is a time. Pardon me?
I'm sorry. It's a very different experience, especially if you're inside the temple. I take it nobody is.
No, nobody is, except I think it was 2 years ago at the burn event that takes place in Utah called Element 11. A young man did commit suicide by running into the effigy fire.
Oh.
Yeah. Then there has been other pretty awful events that have happened. Yeah.
But you were saying, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's fine, Ron. The burning of the man is a celebration. It's loud. It's boisterous. You've got temple priests and temple drummers. Not temple. Burning Man drummers and priests, the whole bit. And it's a very loud, very exciting event. Incredible fireworks. And then Sunday, the following day, they burn the temple, and it's a very different feel. It's somber. It's reflective. It's quiet, because over the course of the week, the temple had been their point of spiritual contact, their place to leave pictures, drawings, poems, anything to express their feelings. Burning Man has always been noted for being the place where they burned the man, but the temple has become almost a de facto spiritual magnet for the entire event. And so there's been now other events that have started up where they're using this concept of a temple setting. Lightning in a Bottle has its temple of consciousness, and others do as well. And so it's interesting to see how that type of spiritual language and architecture is coming into these events.
Okay.
Our sponsor?
Oh yes. I will say this, Don. I can't seem to find our credits for tonight. I don't know where they went. They're not on my. I was going to roll those afterwards. So I just want to give you a heads up about that.
Okay. Well, we're not quite there yet. I thought we would do our next sponsor, and then if we don't have credits, then we'll just be without credits this week.
Oh well, we'll have to credit somebody else, I guess. Okay. Well, our question right now is: do you struggle with picking out the ideal anniversary card for your Zionist Jewish friend who just happens to be married to a Muslim jihadist? Or how about when you wanted to pick out that ideal gift for your communist girlfriend who's embarrassed by the fact that you're a Wall Street banker? Well, this coming Labor Day, millions of people may find themselves in a conundrum that they could easily have solved if they would only shop at the Coexist Boutique. The Coexist Boutique, we help people care enough to take their hands off their loved ones' throats long enough to pick out the perfect gift. Why let your loved ones' murderous, totalitarian, and insane worldviews keep you from getting the perfect gift? The Coexist Boutique. Okay, we're back.
Okay.
So, I'd like to know what happened to our credits. I don't see them.
I don't know. So Carl, don't we have some of the best sponsors?
I'd certainly give you folks credit for finding very creative sponsors.
So there's your credits, Ron. We have credit right from Carl. So okay, so this is a growing phenomenon. It is transformational in the sense that those who attend find their lives are transformed. They feel more spiritual. They have euphoric experiences. They take those back home and in a sense become evangelistic about their worldview that they've been confirmed in. Right. So it impacts culture in a broader way than we might expect because it is happening outside of the event.
Oh,
Is that
absolutely it is. Yes,
okay?
yes.
As an evangelical, is there any merit into thinking about we should consider going to the events as an evangelistic outreach? You mentioned someone that does that. Is that a worthwhile endeavor, or is it more dangerous than helpful to believers?
I think you'd have to be a special person to do it. Um, I have a few friends who've done that type of thing, and continue to do evangelism work, particularly at Burning Man. My friend, one of my friends who does that type of work, he had a small team with him a couple of years ago. He had to send home one of his team members because they couldn't handle the nudity and some of the open sexuality. Uh, and he's had some very frank, candid conversations, some very, very good conversations, and some meaningful conversations, and some lives that have changed because of it. One of the things that I think is very dangerous for us to get involved with in terms of transformational festivals is to go there with bullhorns and picket signs and affirm all the stereotypes that they already hold of Christians. And so some of the people that I talk to who go to transformational events to witness and to be an ambassador for Christ, they're concerned that all of a sudden there's going to be a bus of Christians show up flying banners and yelling at everybody, and just literally confirming all the negative images that's already there.
Yeah, it's interesting you raise that because I was at the Parliament of the World's Religions in 1993. It was the 100-year celebration of it, and the first one they had in 100 years, actually. I don't know if you were at that one or not.
No, I wasn't.
Bill Hunsberger, who you've met in Salt Lake City when we were there, that's where he and I met. And again, there were about a dozen of us evangelicals, uninvited. We just crashed their party. What was painful to us is exactly the thing you're talking about, is you have this marvelous opportunity to have literally thousands of people from other religious persuasions gathered in one place, one-stop evangelistic opportunities that we had. And you had outside a number of individuals with bullhorns and shouting at the participants. And, you know, oftentimes as we would sit down to start talking to someone, we would have to spend the first 20 or 30 minutes explaining why we don't do that sort of thing, because it just so turned them off. They weren't influenced positively, let's say that.
Right,
Uh,
right.
and we had one opportunity. We sat with one of the PR persons for the Covenant of the Goddess, which at the time was perhaps the largest Wiccan group at that time, Donald Frew. For a couple of hours, he came to our suite, and it was myself and Bill Hunsberger and Eric Piment and somebody else. And he just started laying out. I said, you know, I have never been to church, didn't grow up in church, know nothing about the church. My experience with Christians, he said, is that they are liars. And I was a little taken aback. And then he started talking about Mike Warnke, for example, and his book Satan Seller, and how that was all a lie. Well, as it happened, Eric Piment, who was with Cornerstone, was one of the individuals that worked with the authors of the book that exposed Mike Warnke as a fraud. It's called Selling Satan. After spending a couple of hours talking with him, getting past the hurdles of the guys with the bullhorns outside, getting past the claims of supposed authorities on Satanism, and they were not, who misrepresented what Wiccans and pagans believe, he said to us, if I thought being a Christian is what you guys are, I would do it in a heartbeat. But I think you're an anomaly.
Wow. Yeah. Don, there is a place for Christians going to these events. And you and I met at the 2015 Parliament of World Religions. There's a place for us to go to these events. It's not for everybody, but there is certainly a place. My cousin, who lives in Australia, her church buys a booth at their local New Age fair. and sets up a Christian apologetics booth and has led people to Christ right there at that booth. But they're not there just simply to mingle. They actually will go in and buy the booth space and set up and to be a part of that, which
what do they title it? Now that's a really interesting idea. I had a friend who said we need to put up a psalm reading booth instead of palm reading. Psalm reading. Which I kind of like that idea.
I think now we have a chance for some real creativity, and then let's be creative, but let's be honest and truthful, and let's be tactful.
So yeah. What would be a typical approach? You're at this festival, you're talking to these people who are really, I mean, by normal suburban standards, they're extraterrestrial, in their bizarreness, apparently, to most people. How do you approach that? How do you strike up a conversation? How do you lead it into spiritual things? I mean, this is already supposed to be a spiritual type of gathering, so that sounds like the easy part.
One of my friends who goes to Burning Man, he's recounted a few different situations. One of them was just being fairly close to the entrance to the gate. He saw an elderly man walking in. He just simply stopped and said, "You look kind of out of place. What are you doing here?" And the elderly man says, I've got a terminal disease. I'm not going to be here for very much longer. I'm coming to trying to find the meaning of life. And that was open door right there. Didn't have to go any further. The other thing that his small team does is they have bottles of ice cold water, and they're fixing tires and helping people out along the road as they're coming and going, because there's 70,000 people, stuff happens. And people automatically ask, well, why are you doing this? Well, we're Christians. Here's have a bottle of water. And they'll end up talking about their faith and talking about what true Christianity is versus the guys with the bullhorns.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Very practical, very hands-on, but it requires being there. It also requires knowing the culture enough so you still feel somewhat, not necessarily comfortable, but you feel as if you can still interact and do so at a human-to-human level. Okay. We have a real problem within Christianity of demonizing the other, and that's a problem.
For those who would like more information on this, you've written on this. I didn't put the links in, unfortunately. I should have done that. Would you be up for them emailing you, or should they just contact us and we could send them links?
If they want, they can find me on Twitter and on Facebook. Or you simply forward the emails to myself, Don. That'll be fine, no problem at all.
Okay.
Our webpage, foreseeingchange.org, is not up at this moment. It won't be up for a little while yet. I'm working on a book project, and the website's going to be completely revamped. After that, people will be able to contact us a little easier.
Okay, but they can find you on Twitter and Facebook in the meantime.
Right.
And I would say they should do that, because you have some really interesting stuff, and I always enjoy talking to you. You think a lot like we do. You may not have our sense of humor yet, but that'll come. But just to get out there and wrestle around in the mud with unbelievers in their setting is interesting. They're just interesting people who are incredibly lost.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes are open, as you pointed out, open to talking about the true faith, as long as they're actually talking about it, not being shouted at.
Right. Very important.
Yeah. So
for me, the only thing that keeps me from going to Burning Man is figuring out how to put enough sunscreen on without looking like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Well, for me, I'm still back to I don't camp with 25,000 of my closest friends or 70,000 of my closest friends. If I had a nice RV, I would probably do it. But camping is just not my not my thing.
Is there a sunscreen 10,000 level for that? I mean.
All right, Ron is going to talk us out of this now. He's got the credits, and then next week, by the way, we're talking about the New Apostolic Reformation, the Wandering Stars in a New Apostolic Reformation.
This is next week?
Next week, yes.
Okay, because you're kind of breaking up. I've been having audio problems the whole evening. So is it time to go, Don?
It is time to go.
Well, then we need to give credit where credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Mr. Neil before me. Our Jehovah's Witnesses coverage is handled by Armageddon and D. Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polly Gummas. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau is headed up by Lou C. Goosey. Our transgender issues coverage comes from Ben Hur. Fact-checking supervisor is Yoleg Pulling. Our technical assistance is provided by Murky Research. Our legal advisors come from the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Yvonne Pisami. Director of Privacy Assurance, wiretapping, original idea sourcing, Drew A. Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc., which is solely responsible for its content. And we have approved this message, even though you can't prove it by our lawyers. Okay.
All right, Carl, it has been a pleasure again. And we'll do something more in the future, I am sure. And Ron, we will see you next week.
I hope so.